Today, let's talk about my top 10 favorite books for 2024. Welcome to this House of Books. My name is Ashley. I have my cat Millie. We got a new cat over Christmas break. He is integrating into our home. So she has found some high ground here and is gonna keep me company while I talk about books. So I picked 10 books. 2 of them are middle grade books, and then 8 are books that I just read on my own. I log all of the books that I do as read-alouds with my kids. I am still experiencing them just as much as any of the books that I am reading on my own. So I take that as a credit for me too. So that is where I am going to start. Let's start with this one. So this is Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech. I have a very beat up copy. It actually has tape all over it. I found it in a little free library, and so we have revived it a little bit. I read this with my oldest and absolutely loved it. It was so fantastic. So this, you are following Sal as she and her grandparents go on a road trip to see her mom. And during this road trip, there's things that happen, but also she is telling her grandparents the story about her friend Phoebe and things that have happened with Phoebe. Absolutely loved it. Was crying at the end. It was so good. Definitely recommend it. The other middle grade book is actually the final book in a series, and that is The Wild Robot Protects by Peter Brown. So the first 2 being The Wild Robot, the movie that just came out, and The Wild Robot Escapes. So this year we read this one and just absolutely love it. There's not a whole lot that I can say about it because it is the 3rd in a series, but absolutely worth it. If you watched the movie of The Wild Robot, I highly recommend to pick up this whole series and read it. But this was definitely a 5-star read for this year. Now to go on with the other 8 books that I have pulled aside. They are in no particular order until I get to the last 2 books, and those are my first and second books of the year. So I will hold those off until the end. But let's start with this one. I'll just go down the pile. So this is Homegoing by Jessie. Absolutely amazing, beautifully written book. This follows 2 different branches from a family tree. And one of those branches stays in Africa, and the other is sold into slavery and brought here to America. And so you are following through hundreds of years through these families and the experiences that they have in those different timelines. Really, really amazing how it was crafted to tell all these different stories. I mean, it's a short book. It's just 300 pages and it packs a punch. I cannot recommend it enough. I highly recommend, though, if you are going to listen to it on audio, try to get your hands on a picture of the family tree. That definitely helps just keep things organized as you jump timeline to timeline.
You're a good girl.
She is not pleased with the new cat, but is sitting here and, I don't know, tolerating being out here right now. All right, so for my next book, it's Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. This one, I was not expecting to love it as much. I have tried reading All the Light We Cannot See, and it was a DNF. So when this got picked for one of my book clubs, I didn't quite know what to expect from it. But this, you are following 3 different timelines. One in 15th century Constantinople following an orphan, one in present day following a group of people that are connected to a library in Idaho, and then you are also following some kind of futuristic timeline of mostly a girl on a spaceship as they are traveling through time. And so somehow there were able to be these 3 different timelines that are all very, very different, but they were all equally amazing. Like, there wasn't one timeline that I would get to and be like, oh, great, we're going back to this timeline. Like, I wanted to know what happened in each timeline, and then to have it all somehow interconnect was amazing. I really, really enjoyed this book. It was absolutely a 5-star book. My next favorite book was When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. If you are looking for a book that encompasses female rage, where in the 1950s, hundreds of thousands of women turn into dragons, and then it is turned into a very taboo thing of it's not talked about, don't look up in the skies, but women keep turning into dragons. So this, you are following, what was her name? This, you're following a young girl, Alex, and getting to know her family and their dynamics and how this mass dragoning affects their family and continues to over the years. Absolutely a wonderful story. It's told pretty interesting. You know, you're following Alex's point of view, but then you also have just kind of like snippets of other kind of like history of dragonings. Also kind of like news articles from during this time. And you also have like snippets of books about dragoning. So it was amazing. Highly, highly recommend. It will stay on my bookshelf forever, and I think I would like to reread it sometime. I am not really good at rereading books, but that might be one that I want to reread. My next favorite book of this year was The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. This, I mean, it hit all the kind of points that I love. It has family drama where there's this family curse that causes women to eventually go mad in this family. There is magical realism, there's time travel, there's a little bit of a romance. It hit every aspect that I like in books. Highly, highly, highly recommend. The next book I have to talk about is The Lion Women of Tehran by Marjan Kamali. Absolutely loved. So this, you are following two girls through 3 decades as they are growing up in Tehran, and they have very different upbringings and family life that leads them to friendship, and then they kind of separate for a few years and then kind of come back, and they do that quite a bit in the book. So it's definitely about their friendship, about their family life, about the political turmoil going on during this time and continues to. So I really, really loved this book. I thought it was so well written. I've read another by this author, The Stationery Shop, and I really, really liked that one as well. So I think she might be an auto-buy author for me. The next book is my only high fantasy and the only one that's part of a series in any of these books. So that's kind of interesting. But it is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. This is book 1 in the Drowning Empire trilogy. I am currently finishing up the 3rd book in the trilogy, so I'll be talking about that one in my December wrap-up video. But I picked this one up. It had been on my shelf for a while. My husband actually picked out a book for me to read, and he picked this one, and I'm really glad that he did, because I was just kind of a little intimidated by it, and I had heard people say that they loved the first book but didn't like the rest in the series. I'm finding that I am liking all of them. This one definitely sets the stage though. So this one, it is multiple POV. There's a lot of them. And so it's a little confusing trying to keep them all straight of like who's who, where are they in this huge kingdom with all these different islands. There's a really cool magic system using bone shards that is actually taken from people. The emperor is able to put that into beings or other people to have them kind of do what he wants them to do, but eventually that magic wears down that still living person that bone came from. So I thought that the magic system is really, really cool. The people and characters and their development has been really amazing. So can't recommend that one enough. So now here we are to the last 2 books. So the runner-up for my favorite book of the year. I cannot believe it took me this long to read it, but it was The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. This book has been out for a long time. I have tried reading it before, and I wasn't reading like I am now, and unfortunately just kind of set it down and never picked it back up, and I'm so glad that I picked it back up this year. It takes place in 1939 in Germany, following a girl who becomes an orphan and so is kind of adopted by this couple. This girl starts collecting books, which in Nazi Germany during that time, no, like there were book burnings, but she starts collecting books. What really brings this book to kind of stand out on its own is not only this story of this girl and the people that are around her, but who narrates this story is just done in such a way that is so interesting and unique to a World War II historical book. And at the end of this, I was sobbing. It is just so remarkable and definitely a book that will stick with me for a long time. So then this brings me to my favorite book of the year. This should come as no surprise. I think that this will probably be a book that is a lot of people's favorites this year, but that was The Women by Kristen Hanna. Absolutely beautiful. I will say that some of like her backlisted books I don't enjoy. I actually in December have DNF'd one of her backlisted books, which is so funny because then here it is like favorite book of the year. I think that her writing has gotten so much better over the years, and she really knows how to tell stories of kind of, you know, they're like big, huge events, but really kind of pulling you into like the people directly involved in those events. So this takes place during the Vietnam War, and you're following a nurse who goes over to Vietnam and serves there and just witnesses horrific things and is trying to save people's lives, everything like that. But then it's also her experience of coming home, where PTSD is a very, very new thing and definitely not put towards her. You know, she is told multiple times when she goes to the VA, I need help. And she's turned away because she's not a man who is on the front lines. So I knew pretty quickly in reading this that this was going to be my favorite book of the year and that it was going to be really hard to top this. It did come out. Yeah, it came out in February. I did not read it right away. I knew that her newer books pull me in and suck me into characters, and she just stomps on my heart. And that is exactly what happened. I think that this book tells history in such a wonderfully written way. I definitely did not get a lot of Vietnam history in any history class of mine growing up. And so to bring light to Vietnam War and PTSD and the kind of groups of women that were definitely left behind, just absolutely amazing book. 5 stars, screaming from the hilltops, like amazing book. Everyone should read it. All right. Let me see if I can hold them all up. Here's all 10 of my favorite books. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty amazing pile right here of some awesome books. Let's see. I'm going to do, my next video is going to be like yearly stats. And I read over 120 books this year. And to have these 10 come off as favorites, I'm really happy with that. On that note, if you like this or anything else that I post here on this channel, make sure to like and subscribe down below, and I will be back for more soon.